a little bit and say that God hasn't really given us anything? He has just lent us whatever we have. It's on loan, and we're stewards, and we will someday give an account. Wow, Ananias and Sapphira did, and so shall we. 2 final lessons. First lesson is simply this, that when God is first and our reputations have been given to God, it's one of the most difficult things to surrender, but when God is first and our reputations are given to Him, our secret sins are just as important as our public ones. You see, Ananias and Sapphira thought that we could just hold all of this greed in our hearts and nobody will know that we're hypocrites. But my dear friend, they did this in the presence of God. God is watching. Our lives are an open book. The Bible says that all things are naked and open unto the eyes of Him we have to do. When we choose to sin, we choose to sin in the very presence of God. And when we give God our reputations, that becomes important. Someone has said that a secret sin on earth is an open scandal in heaven. You see, because God gets involved, because He's been offended, Satan gets involved and tells God, you can't accept this as one of your people, because if they were to die, they would defile the courts of heaven. So you can't have sinners like this and have fellowship with them. And then Jesus gets involved. Jesus says, wait a moment now, I died for that sin. And because of that, I bore the wrath of that sin. And so it's a big deal in heaven. And when God is first, it is also a big deal to us. Second, when we give our reputations to God and He is first, what He thinks is more important than what people think. At the end of the day, all the image building, all the desire to be well thought of, and the things that we do to kind of brush up our image so that we're thought of as being more spiritual than we really are, and all of the nice sweet talk that we give, and all of the fact that we deny the ugliness within us so that we can project this image, all that suddenly comes to an end, and we say, oh God, at this moment, what you think really matters more. It's important what people think, but not that important, not as important as what God thinks. So you can even endure hurts more easily because you know that He knows the truth. You can forgive more easily. You can be pure more easily because now you know that ultimately it is the inside of you that is the most important part of who you are. You say, well, Pastor, how do we give God our reputations? I mean, that is just such a difficult thing. I'm reminded of Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, where it says, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. We accept our co-crucifixion with Christ and say, I want to be on that cross with Jesus. Now there's one characteristic of somebody who's hanging on the cross, and that is, he has no future plans of his own. And when we come to that cross, and when we say, Jesus, I want to hang there with you, we give Him our reputations, we give Him our desires, we give Him that part of us that we keep denying, and we say, here I am. The surrender is awesome, and the freedom that comes is beautiful. But there's a fight every step of the way. Yes, my friend, today there is a fight every step of the way. This is Pastor Lutzer, and I've just concluded a message about our reputations, being able to give those reputations to God. Let me give you one example of a reputation given to God. You remember Joseph in the Old Testament? He was accused of rape, attempted rape. Potiphar's wife said that Joseph was the one who came on to her. And of course she said that he left his coat, when in point of fact she had ripped it off him because of her desire to be with him. Now, he's thrown into prison, no opportunity to tweak the facts, No opportunity to speak to an attorney who would help. Nobody to represent. No newspaper article giving his side of the story. He has to live there with a ruined reputation. And yet the Bible says very clearly God was with Joseph in his successes when he was in the house of Potiphar. And then it says in prison, God was with Joseph in prison, and that he prospered in prison. Reputation ruined, no one taking his side of the story. He had to be content with the fact that God knew the truth, even if no one else did. And sometimes you and I need to come to that point in our life when ultimately only what God thinks matters.
Thank you, Dr. Lutzer. Dr. Erwin Lutzer has now concluded He Owns Our Reputation, the fifth message in his series, When God is First, taken from the book of Acts. On Monday, we'll learn that God also owns our status. Be sure to join us. Running to Win comes to you from Chicago's Moody Church to help you understand God's roadmap for your race of life. When God is First is a series designed to help all of us order our priorities. All 8 messages can be yours on CD, cassette, or MP3. For full information, call toll-free 1-800-215-5001. That's 1-800-215-5001. Ask about When God is First. Visit our website at runningtowin.org. Don't forget, Running to Win is supported by listeners like you. This is Dave McAllister. Join us Monday for our next Running to Win.